Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another live this morning. Nice to have you on, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to watch us live if you can, and we appreciate that big time. Mike, how are you from Norland? Andrea, Niagara Falls, part of that Trinity. Kathy, you made it to the top. Janice, Brampton. And let's see. Sue, how are you this morning? Good to have you on this morning. Madeleine, Kippawa, Quebec. Nick from our staff. Nativity, good morning. Marilyn from PEI. Rosa, Montreal. Lynn Marie. Doc McEwen from West Tennessee. Mike from Norland. Donna. Elaine, St. John's, Newfoundland. Good morning. Arlene, nice to have you on. Frida, how are you? Denise, Oakville. Wendy from Markham. And Georgie, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Sandy, Chilliwack, British Columbia. Cecilia from Shediac. Marianne, how are you from London? Yvonne, Petawawa. And you know what? I missed that. It went up into the clouds. Marlene, Newfoundland. Rosalinda, Niagara Falls. Linda, St. Jude, Quebec. And Doc McEwen says she beat Brahim. Lorraine, how are you? Shelley, Sherwood Park, Alberta. Pam, Millet, Alberta. Wanda, Virginia. Chantal, Ottawa. Clinton from Sheridan, Wyoming. Donna, John, Elgin, Illinois. And Fran, hi Fran, from Orangeville. Maria, good morning to you. Judy, couple more guys. Patricia. There's Brahim. What happened to you, buddy? Annette, good morning. Shireen and Deb from Timmins. And Patricia, good morning from Florida. Anna, minus 33. Holy smokes. Robin, Laurie, Cambridge. Beverly, New Brunswick. And Milika. I didn't mean to miss you, Milika. You went up into the clouds, and when it goes up there, I can't see it. Guylaine, bonjour. Kitty from Kelowna. Norma from Texas. And we appreciate you guys more than you know. Hi, Sylvia from New York. Gloria from New York. And Janet from Beamsville. Suzanne, Edmonton. And Marva. Okay, guys, let's get going because I want to talk again. I did this yesterday, okay? And I found an old copy of a book that Tony Jr. and I wrote in 2014, okay? I couldn't even remember what year we wrote it. So it's now officially 11 years old. Are You Built for Cancer? Okay? And I was just reviewing it, okay? And we talked about it yesterday, but I want to spend some time today to just some of the statements that were made in that book. And I find them interesting because, well, I said it so many years ago. And here we are today. And we haven't even made a dent in cancer treatment. We haven't even made a dent. There's more cancer today than ever before. When I graduated in the 1970s, 1 out of 20 North American women get breast cancer. Now it's 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6. Prostate cancer is worse for men than ever. And I always give reasons. Well, why is that? I ask the question, first of all, why? Why is it worse? Shouldn't be worse, should be better. President Nixon declared in the 1970s the war on cancer. I think it was just last year, if I'm not mistaken, President Biden says, we're going to win this war on cancer. Well, it's nice to say, but in my opinion, we're looking for love in all the wrong places, and that's why we haven't even made a dent. Okay? Yesterday, we talked about 3 eyes. Okay? And that's it sort of talks about this book here. The 3 main points I made in the book. I made a lot of points. I wrote a lot. Okay? But the 3 overarching principles of cancer. 3 of them. Okay? 1 is insulin. Okay? And I wrote down, hold on, at the start of the book, 102 questions. Okay? And I like, for example, I said, did you know that cancer cells, okay, this is point 102. Okay, because this is at the start of the book, and I said, did you know that cancer cells have no metabolic flexibility? Okay? They have no metabolic flexibility. They're not flexible. There's only one fuel that they love, and that's sugar. If you give a cancer cell a ketone, which is another fuel, by the way, if you give a cancer cell a ketone, it cannot use it as fuel. Well, guys, that ought to be mainstream, don't you think? Now, I'm not saying, eating eggs, meat, and cheese is it's the only thing that'll keep you away from cancer. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, and what we've known, and I went into quite a bit of detail yesterday in an afternoon session, by the way. We went into quite a bit of detail about the Warburg effect. And that is what we knew in 1928 by a German scientist whose name was Otto Warburg. And what he discovered is that cancer cells are renegades. They're ravenous. He used that word, ravenous. They are ravenous for glucose. And they, rather than a normal cell, they use their energy much differently. And their mitochondria, their battery packs, have a defect in them. And they only can use glucose. And that, what Otto Warburg said back in the 1920s was that they used fermentation. Okay, what's that mean? Okay? Well, that's when you can turn milk into yogurt. That's fermentation. Cabbage into sauerkraut, right? That's fermentation. Sourdough bread, like I was saying yesterday, my wife set up a lab. I called it a lab in our kitchen to make sourdough. How does that happen? Well, I don't know anything about that, except that you start with a little kit, and it's bacteria that actually feed off sugar in the food. So milk, okay, to turn it into yogurt, the bacteria feed off the sugar, the natural sugar in milk. And with time, and heat and covering it. I watched my wife cover. Like, I found it a fascinating, like I said, okay, when do we get to eat this bread? Like 2 months from now? But if any of you guys have ever done sourdough bread, you understand fermentation. It is a better bread, guys. There's no doubt about that. Okay, much less carbohydrate involved. But I always use a little disclaimer. If you're a carboholic, you got to watch any kind of bread. Now, sourdough is better. There's no doubt about that. But it uses the process of fermentation. That's cancer. Cancer cells use the process of fermentation. So if you eliminate sugar, if you eliminate it, you're breaking the cycle. You're breaking what cancer needs to survive. Okay? And it's funny because I talked about that in 2014 in the book, Are You Built for Cancer? And so it's important to understand that. Cancer needs fuel. It cannot take a ketone. So if you're eating eggs, meat, and cheese, okay? A lot of people, the keto diet, okay? I don't particularly like the keto diet because there's a lot of crappy foods in there. I'm not big on that. I know you can go to the grocery store and you can go to Costco or whatever and you can get keto foods. I was never big on that because to me, that's not good nutrition. I'm big on nutrition, nutrients. And the more dense the food in terms of its nutrient capacity, like an egg, nutrient dense, meat, nutrient dense, dairy, cheese, butter, nutrient dense, full of vitamins, full of minerals, full of amino acids, in the perfect combination of protein and fat. They're nutrient dense. Guys, I can tell you something. Cancer cells can't survive on that stuff. Because metabolically, cancer cells have no metabolic flexibility. Dr. Martin, 2014. Okay, I'm sort of not fooling myself, but educating myself again of something that I wrote a long time ago. Okay, what? Okay, let me. I'm quoting from this book. Okay, did you know that there are numerous tribes in Africa, Indonesia, and in the Arctic that consume 5 times more fat than North Americans and display very little cancer? Even today. Okay? I've always said to the Inuit, don't eat our food. Eat your food. I've said that, by the way, to, and I've told you this in the past, I've done a lot of work with the indigenous people, okay? Because I sort of specialized in diabetes, okay? In metabolic syndrome. It was sort of my specialty. And so I did a lot of work. I did a lot of lectures. I traveled a lot, even into reservations, and talked about to the indigenous people, hey, stop eating white man's food. Like we're killing you. Okay? Stop. Go back to the way you used to eat. You're not going to get diabetes, which they do. About 80% of the indigenous people, I'm sure it's the same in the United States, but in Canada, they're so much more susceptible to diabetes genetically. But you ain't ever going to become a diabetic if you eat right. And, like they love white man's food. And I said, well, don't eat it. Like, the Inuit don't eat our McDonald's. Are you crazy? Go back to living the way you did. Okay? Like, the modern world is great, except for our eating habits are terrible. Everything's processed. Okay? So here's people when they you can still find them and they eat nothing but fat and blubber. And they do well. And they don't get cancer. They don't know what that is, cancer. Okay? And in this book I wrote, well, the only way the Inuit die is if they get eaten by a polar bear. They don't die from natural causes like us. Well, cancer is not natural. It's not natural. It's a chronic disease. Anyway, let's get back to the 3 I's, okay? Because we talked about them yesterday. One is insulin. And guys, insulin's a food hormone. It's a death hormone if it's used way too much. So the one thing you can control 100% is what you put in your mouth every day. I mean, you can't control everything. You certainly can't control your environment generally, right? We live in a toxic soup. Our planet. It's the way it is. You ain't getting away from it. But, okay, there's insulin, and then there's inflammation. And I talked about that a lot in the book, about inflammation. Inflammation is on your side if you have an infection. Okay? Why do you feel so terrible if you have a cold? Why do you feel bad? You got a headache. You got sinus pain. You got, you can hardly get out of bed. A little wee virus you can't even see is it grounded you. Well, all that fatigue and all that pain is inflammation. Well, but it's on your side because you have a fever. And you want a fever. Because fever helps to kill the bug. It drains you, but it's on your side. Until inflammation's not on your side, if it doesn't go away. Now, here's some big causes of inflammation. One of the biggest causes of inflammation, I'm showing you 1 pound of fat here. See that? 1 pound. Okay? And this little mountain here that you see causes inflammation. So one of the reasons of the reset, by the way, guys, okay, is because when you do the reset, you're burning fat, not muscle, but fat. And you're burning it as a fuel. Your body's using it, getting rid of it. It's emptying your liver of it. It's really, really good for you guys. Because what that does is that it lowers your inflammation in the body. And inflammation, like I said, is on your side until it becomes chronic and it's not going away. One of the biggest causes of inflammation in the body is extra fat. I wrote about it here. Let me just see if I can get some statistics on that. I've got it here somewhere. Yeah, did you know that being overweight is an inflammatory condition? Okay? It's inflammatory. And let me just see. I know there was something I should have marked it here. I'm not going to spend all day doing it. Let me just see here. Anyway, what I was saying though, it increases your risk, like just having extra weight increases your risk of cancer. You have people have fat, even skinny people. They have fat around their organs, they don't even know it. But that fat, called visceral fat, visceral means around the organs, is very dangerous. It's very inflammatory. And so extra weight, extra insulin is inflammatory. Leaky gut is inflammatory. Okay? Leaky gut allows garbage, toxins, to get into your bloodstream and then off into your tissue, like breast tissue, prostate tissue, your colon. Leaky gut. And one of the biggest things in tumors, and you and I have talked about this for a long, long time, one of the biggest things in tumors is that tumors contain a lot of fungus or yeast, the cousin of mold. Okay? And of course, they love sugar. But the point is, a lot of tumors, when you break them down, one of the factors in there are fungi. How did they get there? Leaky gut. And that creates an inflammatory response. Your body sees it as an invader. It's like autoimmune. Your body sees it as an invasion. And you don't even know it. Because nobody's told you that. You don't have a little sign on your head going off saying you got leaky gut. But I'm going to tell you something. If you've taken antibiotics and you have not replaced that bacteria with probiotics, you got leaky gut. If a person lives on non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, NSAIDs, like Advil, and I put Tylenol, and it's stuff you can get over the counter, that destroys your microbiome. It causes a dysbiosis. And if you get a dysbiosis, you get a leaky gut, and you got an invasion of yeast into your bloodstream and then off into your tissue. And remember, yeast is a carrier. It'll carry heavy metals like lead and mercury, cadmium. Again, creating what you don't even know is an inflammatory response within your body. Your body's immune system creates an inflammation to release more cytokines and anti-inflammatory markers. And then the third eye, okay, so you got insulin, that's food, and that's crappy carbs. Look, you need insulin to break food down, okay? It's part of your food cycle. That's all right. It's at the rate, the speed, and the amount of insulin that you need. If you have a steak, okay, you're eating a steak, you don't need insulin. Well, you need a little bit, but you don't need much. If you're having an egg, you don't need insulin. You need a little bit, but not much. That's the difference. It's the speed at which food breaks down. So if you have a carbohydrate, a crappy carb, your insulin's going through the roof. Oh, Dr. Martin, it's oatmeal. I know, but it's stupid because now you need an enormous amount of insulin. You're building cancer. They're building blocks for cancer and then inflammation. And another thing, people are walking around and they have no idea. Because when you're eating processed foods, foods that are made with bad oils, oils that were meant for your car and not for your body, you know what happens? Inflammation. Your levels of omega-6 to omega-3 are way off. People today are walking around, they have no idea. They're 25, 30 to 1, even higher than that ratio. They don't have enough omega-3 in their body, and they got way too much omega-6. And when you go into the middle aisles of your grocery store and look at all those oils, I call them the hateful eight. From peanut oil to grapeseed oil to soy oil and canola, Canada's gift to the world. These are inflammation-producing oils. They were meant for your vehicle, not for you. Well, they're low, they're polyunsaturated fats, Dr. Martin. They're low in fat. Yeah, that's the problem. And they're very inflammatory. And they can kick cancer into high gear. Avoid like the plague. I've been consistent about that for many, many years. Okay? Get off those stupid oils. So, and then the third I, okay, that we talked about yesterday was immune dysfunction. So cancer needs insulin. Cancer needs inflammation. And cancer, in order to survive and thrive, cancer needs an immune system that's not working properly. And one of the biggest factors of that immune dysfunction is people have this crazy idea that the sun is bad for them. I called it back in the, I don't know, even in the 80s, I called it the Johnson and Johnson disease. And people went for it, hook, line, and sinker. And that was the sun causes cancer. And you know what we know today? That it's just the opposite. The sun prevents cancer. And of course, you know, sun, steak, and steel. Do you think I'm just joking about that? No, I was dead serious, right, about that. About sun, steak, and steel. And that the sun is your best friend to prevent cancer. And study after study after study has shown that if you can get your vitamin D levels to a certain optimized number, I mean, it's research that's being buried because nobody, you know what, guys, the powers to be, they don't like to hear this stuff. I know it, you know, it's like a conspiracy to keep us away from the truth when it comes to cancer. You just do a lot better in the sun. And nobody's suggesting that you burn in it. It's just that good for you. One of the greatest things you can do is getting your vitamin D levels up to a certain number. We talk about this. The newest research is showing that if you can get your vitamin D levels in the United States to 80, for doctors, that would be considered high, but it's actually optimized. 80 ng/ml, and in Canada, like the 200s. NMOLL. Oh, I hate those little numbers, those little letters of the alphabet. Okay? But if you can optimize your vitamin D, my word. Incredible. Where are you going to hear that? Well, I've been telling you for years about vitamin D. When Linus Pauling won a Nobel Prize in the 70s for his research on vitamin C, and good for him, I always said it, even in my radio days and that. Well, he only missed out by one letter in the alphabet. He was talking about vitamin C, and I was talking about vitamin D. And people are extremely low. 80-90% of the population have low levels of vitamin D. Well, you know what, guys? That's immune dysfunction. Your immune system not going to work properly. It cannot work properly if you have low levels of vitamin D. It just can't. Because, as I mentioned this yesterday, that cancer cells have 10 times more receptors for glucose, insulin. 10 times. But a T cell, which is a Navy SEAL of your immune system, has 100 times more antennas for vitamin D than anything else. Do you think vitamin D might be important? They're solar panels. They're looking for the sun. And what do? We avoid it. I was screaming blue murder. Even during COVID. I said, would you get outside and get in the sun? Take everybody in the hospital and put them up on the roof when the sun's out. I said it. Right? Put them outside. One of the biggest fighters of cancer is not only vitamin D, it's melatonin, but not as a supplement. When you get the sun. When you get the sun, your melatonin levels go up. Your antioxidant levels go up. When do you feel better, by the way? When it's sunny out or when it's dark and gray? Come on. Common sense. It's a cancer fighter. And everyone, well, before you get cancer, should be taking vitamin D. But let's say you did get cancer. They should be injecting vitamin D into you. But don't hold your breath. Okay. I don't know how many more sessions we're going to do on this book, but I kind of like it. I just reviewing it. I get excited. Okay, guys. Friday's question and answer. That means you got to send your questions in and make sure your questions get seen. Like if you scroll your questions here during the program, guess what, guys? I don't see it. Okay? And it's not likely to get on our Friday program. You got to send us an email at info@martinclinic.com, okay? info@martinclinic.com. Then we see your question. And I'm happy to answer it. I'm a question and answer guy, by the way. Okay? Have I told you lately that I love you? I haven't? Well, I do. And I mean it. Thanks for being the best audience in the world. the smartest. Okay? You guys. Yep. Thanks for the numbers, boys and girls. I mentioned this yesterday. We're up to 89,000 followers on Facebook. And for almost 5 million downloads on the Doctors In podcast. That's you guys. Okay? That's you guys. Talk to you soon.